So I've got in my corner the live button. So welcome everybody who's listening in for our employee wellness conversation today. And I'm completely thrilled to have, I don't know if you like the word or not, veteran in the workplace wellness, Bill, but we have William McPeck here with us today, who
Yeah,
has
veteran's fine.
veteran is good. All right. Many years experience in the workplace
I've been
wellness.
called a lot worse in life.
Great. But before we get started, as we must every time, we want to put up here our medical disclaimer that yes, this is the Ovadia Heart Health team. However, this show and anything we talk about today is for educational purposes only. We're hoping to inspire you, make you think a little bit about maybe your company program or somewhere else. If you do have a specific medical concern, please do reach out to team@ifixhearts.com. Okay, so that was the bookkeeping. Welcome, Bill. Long time no hear or see. Great to have you. For our listeners who don't know about all your incredible experience, can you just give us the briefer version of where and how you've been working in all these years in the worksite wellness industry?
Well, not sure. Hopefully I'm coming in fine, but you're breaking up at my end terribly. So I, this is going to be interesting. Uh, I'm assuming you were asking about my background a little bit and how I ended up where we're at today. Okay. Um, I kind of chuckled when I read your announcement or your PR for the program because I think you used the word 50. And I know I'm old, but I haven't been in worksite wellness that long. It's more like coming up on 30 years. But all told, between my other uh, aspects of my work life, I probably do have about 50 years in the area of employee benefits and employee health, going back to my days with the state of Maine. And in that role, I started out, my first exposure to employee health was as a member of the state employee health insurance trust board of directors. Um, Eventually, I became co-chair of that group, and that led to my eventually becoming director of employee health and safety for Maine state government, which then led to my getting involved in worksite wellness. And as they say, the rest is history. Like I said, going back about 30 years with the worksite wellness. The at some point in time, the board of trustees wanted to explore the concept of worksite wellness. So when they went out to bid, they put in a question or two in the bid process about the willingness on the part of the vendor, if they're selected, to do worksite wellness. The vendor that got selected turned out to be Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Maine, and they uh, gave to the state of Maine for the length of the contract a full-time person to do worksite wellness. And that person was assigned to me as the supervisor. So the, I figured, how can I supervise somebody if I don't know anything about their work and what they're supposed to be doing? So that's what led to my getting involved in worksite wellness, and it's been a great ride. I've thoroughly enjoyed the nearly 30 years I've had in the field.
Excellent. Well, hopefully you can hear me, and I understand from our backstage we're both coming in loud and clear. Would you sort of share some of your insights, having had all this great experience, Bill? what are still some of the ongoing challenges within workplace wellness programs, be it those at the small level or let's say the larger, more comprehensive level? What still remains a challenge?
Well, I think certainly there are challenges, and I think the biggest elephant or the biggest challenge in the room is this the shift that we're now going through, if we haven't already gone through it, from a focus just on the physical health of the employee to the well-being of the employee. And that just brings in all those more dimensions of well-being that we have to, that the employer has to address. So I think that's the biggest challenge is how employers are going to address more than just the physical health of the employee, which in and of itself can be challenging for any number of reasons. Uh, so that's probably the biggest one. I think a second challenge that we face is the challenge of language. Many of the words that we use in our field lack a consensus based definition. So the one that comes to the biggest one probably is what's the difference, if anything, between wellness and well being? And in my view, there isn't any, but yet many people are saying that or trying to make the case that wellness is different than well being, when actually what we worked on in the past or what we focused on in the past was health and not wellness or well being. So I think these words that we use that aren't well defined are creating a challenge for us as well. I think a third challenge and is a challenge of, well, I hate to use the word balance, but I don't know what other word to use. And that's the challenge of how much effort is placed at the individual level and how much effort and attention as well is placed at the organizational level. Because it's what's the challenge is addressing that interplay between the individual employee and the influence of the organization and the workplace on the employee. So that's another big challenge. I think hopefully AI will help us address this at some point, but I think another big challenge is the issue of personalization. It's very hard for an employer to customize and personalize a well-being program or programming and activities. And yet, because we're each unique with our own needs and interests, we have to get at that personalization and customization and somehow. And then I think the biggest, another big challenge, I shouldn't say the biggest, but another big challenge is that whole area of measurement and evaluation. And we have not done a good job of that in the field in the past. And I think that's going to carry forward into the whole well-being. And the fact that well-being is so much more than just one dimension or one domain, that's going to complicate matters even more. So there's 5 big challenges.
Definitely. And for whether you're an employer listening in or an employee in a wellness program, you just got some nuts and bolts of plenty of things to work on. Can we just take a little time to unpack each one of those a little bit? And let's just start with the elephant in the room, as you said, the mental health piece. And I know you've written about this a lot in your writings, both. And I encourage everyone to follow Bill. He's listed as William McPeck, Bill, on LinkedIn. He has some great articles continually coming out. How can and where would, let's say a company realizes this, they realize they're not addressing the mental health piece. Where would one even start?
Well, I think many employers have already started. many employers have a long and proud history of addressing mental health in the workplace, going back to the 1940s when employers started to address employee alcoholism. But mental health is one of those words that isn't well defined, or there is no consensus definition. So, what we have, because of the predominance, in my mind anyway, of the um, pathological philosophy and the medical, I can't think of the word right off the top of my head, but the medical philosophy as well, that we've only focused on mental illness, and I think empl- employers today are beginning to recognize that they've got to not only address the issue of mental health, I mean mental illness, but they've got to expand their focus and address more broadly the concept of mental health. Important to keep in mind that only roughly 20 to 30% of employees experience a mental illness of some type, yet 100% of employees across the organization experience mental health. We all have a level of mental health, whether it's using um, the scale or the continuum of languishing to flourishing. We all have some level of mental health on that scale. So we've got to do a better job of addressing the mental health of employees, not just helping those who are unfortunate to get a mental illness. The other piece of it, I think, is we've got to also address the issue of mental distress or despair, because bad things happen to us. You know, members of our family die, we get sick, um, we lose pets. All of these things impact our mental health, and we've got to do a better job. And employers, we've got to help employers do a better job of addressing, like kind of what I call life coping skills, or what are called life coping skills, because life is going to happen to us, whether we want it to or not. So I I now propose a three component model of mental health. Obviously, the mental illness component that we've been dealing with for a long time, but adding in the mental health or the mental wellness, depending on which term you want to use, and the mental distress. So we've got to move into this new model and the frameworks that this new model will allow us to build out and to that employers can utilize. At the same time, we've got to keep hitting stigma, because people shouldn't feel, if people become mentally ill or experience a mental illness, they shouldn't feel bad about it. It's sad in my mind, speaking as an MSW, that less than 50% of the people that have access to mental health care access that care. It's because of the stigma. So we've got to keep hitting that stigma. And then finally, which ties back to the whole issue of mental wellness, we've got to do a better job of getting at and helping helping employers, because that's primarily who I work with, is employers and non-employees, but help employers to help employees get a better handle on who they are and the inner core, and how that inner core of who they are as a person influences and impacts their behavior, both in their actions, both at work and outside at work, in the family. So the whole role of mental health needs to be expanded.
Yeah. It's some great, I don't want to use the word tips, but really components to be looking at. And I think, just in a broad strokes way, you're talking a lot more. There's been a lot of complaints about worksite wellness being solely disease management. And that's where you said that mental illness piece. But this is really broadening that scope into saying, oh, okay, what about just life coping skills as part of employee wellness program. How could we incorporate those? Because that's important also to our mental health.
Absolutely. We all want to be happy and fulfilled. And that's the mental wellness piece. So we got the mental wellness, we've got the coping, and then we've got the disease management. But even back when we just focused on physical health, we it was always about more than just disease management. We had health education and health promotion.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to jump to also one of the points you talked about, the individual or the organization. That was like your number 3 point. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, historically, as you know, we've done we focused primarily on the individual employee and getting that individual employee healthy, and vibrant and so forth, whatever adjectives you want to use. But it's well established that how we act at the workplace or within the workplace is not only a function of who we are as an individual, but it's also influenced and is a function of the organization, it's the work organization and the workplace environment. So we've got to do not one or the other. Some people say, well, we should just be focusing in on the organization and not worry about the individual. And I don't agree with that. My philosophy, my position is that we've got to address both. We got to address and support the individual, but at the same time, we've got to help employers deal with the workplace environmental issues, the psychosocial risks, um, and the other workplace environmental factors that influence our behavior as human beings.
And this, obviously the individual, that gets into your point about, we need to do a better job at personalization. And maybe it's personalization also of the company, of that its uniqueness. How can we merge those two sort of qualities at a better level?
Yeah, I don't know about merging them as much as it's important to look at the context and the individual context and the organizational context, and yet
Yeah.
and have to do both. It's I don't know any I can't think of any situation where you can avoid having to do both, not having to do both.
And do you think, what's your feeling, Bill, in terms of, surveys or finding out what the individual wants and finding out what the company wants? Do you see validity into that? Do you have certain tests that you wouldn't even work with a company unless you did? What is your feeling on that?
Well, you got obviously. In fact, I just did. No, it wasn't in the article that I posted this morning. It was on a what's the word that I want? It was a post that I made in a group that I'm in, and the presenter was talking about auditing and how we need to audit. But in my view, it's actually more about assessment and auditing together. Um, so you need to assess. Assessment has to be a core piece of what we do. We have to assess at the individual level. We have to assess at the organizational level. And the good news is that there are a ton of tools out there that uh, our community or our profession can tap into. I've yet to find a topic that strikes my interest that I go in and start to research on either Google or Google Scholar or one of the other databases that I can access and not find that it hasn't been looked at by somebody already. And then oftentimes there are tools available, survey tools and assessment tools that we can tap into and plug in to the employer. The question or the challenge is then you kind of run into the issue of survey fatigue. and you don't want obviously to do that. But I'm sort of a fan of pulse surveys where you might ask one or two questions a month or even less frequently than that, depending on the circumstances. But we need that data. And the challenge is, and I don't have an answer for this yet, is putting the two pieces together, putting what the employee wants and needs and desires together with management wants, needs, and desires into that cohesive whole that benefits both the employer and the employee.
Yeah. And that's the magic of your role as the consultant or the outside, more objective voice, of which you have lots of experience. Um, I, I want to go to one piece. We've talked a little bit about more theoretical or structural aspects of employee wellness. Could you share this one particular sort of story about a company you worked with or a situation that you encountered that took some of your great sort of skills as an experienced professional?
Well, I think what I'd like to share is like many of us in the field, I cut my teeth with a large employer. I was the director of employee health and safety for Maine state government, which at the time had 13,500 employees. So,
Whoa.
yeah, whoa. Um, and it was me, myself, and I when I started. Um, so one of the things that became apparent to me as I read and became more versed in the field was the fact that 50% of employees in this country are employed by small employers. And small employers typically have been ignored by worksite wellness vendors because of the challenges associated with small employers and the inability, if you will, to scale up to a profitable level. So I became enamored with how can I take what I'm learning in the with the large employer and what the research in large employers is putting forth or revealing, and how can I translate that to the small employer? So when I retired from state service and I went to work for a startup in worksite wellness, which unfortunately didn't last too long. But I went from there to working for a nonprofit here in Maine, a nonprofit public health entity, which got a grant to target employers in its catchment areas. And most of the employers were small employers. So it was exciting to actually get my hands and feet wet in that environment, working with small employers, the largest of which was 15. So the model that as I thought about how this might all work, one of the models that I came up with was to utilize a an association or a downtown um, or a Main Street type of group to sort of serve as the overall umbrella. Chamber of Commerce might be another example to serve as an overall umbrella and my point of contact, but the members would be of the member companies would be the benefit or the beneficiary of the work. So that was the model that we used for the grant, and we were successfully able to implement that model in a rural community here in Maine. Like I said, with the largest employer of 15 employees, and it worked. Unfortunately, it's a lot of work, and employers at that with that scale or that size need a lot of support. But we proved the model did work.
Fantastic. Congratulations on that. And, um, it 13,500 employees down to, your regular small business that might have any let's say 20. We're working with some companies that, only have 20 members in them. Um, what is the biggest challenge between that dichotomy?
Well, I think the challenge is to take what we've learned over the years and what the research has revealed to us about how to effectively and successfully address employee well-being and translate it into practices, programming, activities that work at that level of scale. And that's that's what you have to overcome because uh, employee employees, in my mind, employees shouldn't be penalized from a wellness or a well-being perspective because they work for a small employer as opposed to a large employer. And many small employers don't provide benefits, so you don't have that luxury of even having the benefit vendors to rely on. So the rule of thumb that I use is that the smaller the employer, the more it has to rely on the community based resources, which means that the employer needs to have a good working relationship with the nonprofits and the providers within the community so that they can access those services for their employees.
Absolutely. It's about building a bigger community than the one that they have within the company.
It's
Yeah.
And it's about relationships. No different than business as a whole or life. I mean, it's all about relationships.
Um, well, I just take a little moment. If anyone does want to reach out to us about our employee wellness programs, I think you can reach us at ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness. And if you're interested in following William, I highly recommend William McPeck, McPeck, on LinkedIn. It's got some great articles and is always you're a regular publisher there. I see frequently stuff from
Well,
you.
when
Um,
when I'm
yeah.
because I'm retired, I have time on my hands, and I'm a high curiosity, lifelong learner, and I want to share what I with my community and my colleagues what I've learned over the years and what I'm continuing to learn as because I'm retired, but I'm not sitting in the rocking chair on the porch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say keep it going. You talked about originally in your first 5 points about language, and several things keep coming up in the conversation. This idea of wellness or well-being. Is it mental health? Is it mental well-being? Um, are there any of these situations that you see more prominent right now that we should be more striving for more clarity on in worksite wellness?
We need to strive for clarity in general. That's one of the big issues is the lack of clarity on the part of employers as to what they should do, how they should do it, when they should do it, and so forth. So clarity is a big issue. I think I would be remiss if I didn't say I had some fun not too long ago with AI. I've become enamored with generative AI over the last couple of years. So I asked, I think I did this on Chat GPT. So I asked Chat, what are the top 10 issues related to workplace well-being or employee well-being? And it gave me the list. I then asked it for the top five, and it gave me what it thought was the top five, or what the training that it's had gave me the top five. And then I asked for the top three, and then finally the top one. And the top one shouldn't probably be a surprise to anybody, and it was the issue of mental health.
Mm.
So I think mental health is if there's and I'm torn because I cut my teeth on physical health, and there's a strong connection or a strong association between physical health and mental health. Many of the mental illnesses are co-occurring diseases with a physical health. So I think physical health is important too, but probably and true to my professional training as an MSW, I'd have to say mental health is or should be number one, not because of the number of people experience mental health, but just or a mental illness, but just as I said, everybody. Well, that's also true for physical health. Everybody experiences some level of mental health, but everybody also experiences some level of physical health. So getting back to the challenges, there's one of the challenges is what do we focus on? What are the domains that we focus on? And I don't think anybody can go wrong if focusing on physical health and mental health or just physical health alone. Some don't want to address, for whatever reason, don't want to address mental health. So so be it. Focus on physical health. Um, you can't
Yeah,
go wrong with either physical health or mental health, in my mind.
I think that's a great point here. As we say, uh, just get started. If you only want to focus on the physical health, go that route. If you feel capable and you feel you have the tools to focus on mental health, or solely that, or both. But the point is to get started somewhere. Um,
And I think to get started, there's absolutely in my mind no reason today why any employer cannot address awareness building, whether it be for physical health, for mental health, or any of the other domains of well being. Every employer can address, no matter its size, can address awareness building. So that's the starting point. When I work with a new company, I always recommend that they start with an awareness building process. And then as they're building awareness on the part of employees and labor management, they create the opportunity and time to do some other background things to put the support and frameworks in place for other things down the road. But they're doing something, and that something is building awareness, increasing either health literacy or mental health literacy, financial literacy, insurance literacy. Pick one. Um, but that's the starting point. And there's no, like I said, there's no reason why any employer cannot do awareness building.
um, well, as we get closer towards the end here, it's really inspiring to say, start with the awareness building, right? You heard it from Bill McPeck, a longtime consultant, advocate. There's all kinds of other adjectives. You've just been in the business, and I'll correct my statement, 30 years, 30 plus years, right? And is the best place is it on LinkedIn to follow you?
Yeah, the best place is LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Facebook, but primarily LinkedIn.
Okay. And
And
if you're, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to say my email is my name, my formal name, William McPeck at gmail.com. And I'm happy you can reach me that way as well.
Perfect.
There's no,
And
there's no digital bill yet. We're working
yeah,
on it.
well, you need to talk to Chat GPT more, and get going on that
Yeah,
one.
I
But
know what to do. It's just a matter of doing it.
yeah, and if anyone wants to reach out to us, their website is up here, ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness. We also have a host of white papers, at least 6 or 7 topics up there now. You can download them all for free from sedentary behavior to musculoskeletal issues to leadership. We've got a host of those things for free. Um, Bill, what a fabulous time for me to be able to talk with you. I loved your 5 components that you shared with us at the start. Any last closing thoughts for either the employers listening or anyone in HR, maybe even an employee that would like to see a little more in their wellness program?
Well, I think you sort of said it best, and just is to do it. Just jump in. The water's fine. Even at this time of year when the lakes are still cool and the ocean sure is cool, but jump in. The water's fine. The well-being water is just fine and a great place to be, and it's a great way for an employer to demonstrate that you care about your employees, and that's a critically important piece today. You know, historically or for a long time, recruitment was sort of the big focus for a lot of employers. And while that's still true, retention is now the name of the game. If you're going to take all the time and energy and effort and money to recruit an employee, you want to be able to retain them. And many employees today are looking for support from their employer for enhancing their well-being. So, as I said, jump in. The water's fine. It's not that hard to do, even to do just an awareness building effort and start there. There are many people, whether they be private consultants or state government employees, um, federal government employees, although that turmoil is, we're going to have to wait and see how that all settles as far as what's going to happen to NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, which has come out with its total worker health model. So there's a lot of support out there, and if you're an employee, you can do it too. It's you can there's well documented cases where employees have started wellness programs or health programs. No reason why you can't do that as well. But I say that with the caveat: you can be the spark plug, you can be the champion, you can be the starter, but you got to get the commitment of management and managers, leaders and managers for the long haul, which is another whole story in and of itself, as you know, Krishna. So,
Yes.
uh, so do it. You said it best. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great note to finish out here. Again, been my extreme pleasure to have a conversation with worksite wellness expert William McPeck, Bill McPeck, and thank you again. What an honor.
Well, thank you. It's my honor to be on your program and to share. Like I said, I love sharing what I've learned in the trenches and what I've learned through the research and reading and so forth with my colleagues and with other employers that I
Oh,
haven't had the pleasure of working with yet. And it's
great.
great to connect with you again too.
That's right. Right.
It's been a number of years.
The connections stay strong over all the
They do.
decades.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Thank you to all listening in, and look for the recording. Check out any of our other employee wellness recordings. We've got a host of them out there. And have a great summer in Maine, Bill.
I will. I live on a lake and I live for this time of year. So the garden's in, the flowers are all in. Now it's time to play.
There we go. Right. Okay. See you, everyone.